The Ottoman Empire was one of the most powerful empires, spanning from 1299 to 1922 for over 600 years. The Ottoman Empire was a gunpowder empire, meaning that gunpowder was the main reason why the Ottomans were able to conquer so much land. The Ottomans emerged from Anatolia in the west of Turkey and sprang from the ruptures of the Roman Empire. In 1299, Osman I officially named himself leader of the Ottomans and became the first leader of the empire. The leader's main source of power came from God, and they believed that they were God's slaves and were chosen to lead Muhammad's community to spread the miracles of the Muslim God. In 1453, the empire further expanded its power after conquering Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire. At its peak during the 16th to 17th century, the Ottomans controlled 15 million people and 2 million square miles of land. Most of the Ottoman rulers had three major goals for expansion. The first was to ensure long-term security and survival of the empire. The second was to spread Muslim influence around the world, and the third was rivalry between Europe. The Ottomans wanted the trade routes that Europe controlled. The Ottoman Empire had one relatively consistent form of government throughout the time of its existence. It consisted of a sultan who had the power of an absolute monarch, but also had a bureaucracy intertwined in his court. This court was called the Divan, which is a small council of ministers who help and advise on the day-to-day functioning of the government and formulations of policies. The head of this court was the Grand Vizier, who could be the right-hand man acting for the monarch, or could be the main ruler depending on the strength or activeness of the monarch. The court and the sultan oversee the local government, which have a similar yet smaller version of the bureaucracy in the sultan's court. The Ottoman Empire had a very strong economy, heavily based on trade and agriculture. They dominated Silk Road trade while in use, and when it disbanded, they dominated international trade. Practically everyone had to go through the empire because it was at the crossroads of the Mediterranean, Asia, and North Africa. Similar to the Mongols, they developed a policy of forcibly resettling merchants to encourage trade. Within the social hierarchy in the Ottoman Empire, there are four classifications of people, not including the Sultan, where his or her position was based off merit and/or skill rather than hereditary titles. At the top was the Sultan and his court. Next was men of the pen, which were highly educated people like scientists and lawyers, who had more power and better paying jobs in society. Next in the hierarchy were the men of the sword, who were mainly military people who had military training and skills. They could protect the country and also work other jobs when not needed to fight. A part of this class were the Janissaries, which was an elite military group where most of the soldiers were converted Christian youths who had very strict rules. They were trained and raised to only be loyal to the Sultan. Then there was the men of negotiation, who were merchants, artisans, and tax collectors. They were respected but did not make a lot of money and had no major skills. Next was men of husbandry, and they had the least of the skills and were farmers and herders. They owned their own land and produced food for themselves and the country. Many of the Ottoman rivalries were caused due to the great expansion and growth over time, specifically with the Byzantine Empire. Eventually, the Ottomans managed to conquer them as they went out against their weaknesses of a poor defense and a relatively unhappy lifestyle. Another major rival of the Ottomans was the House of Habsburg, of which they fought many violent wars from the 16th to the 18th century to claim dominance in Eastern Europe. The House of Habsburg later became Austria and was sometimes even supported by the Romans, Habsburg Spain, and the Hungarian Kingdom. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the Peace of Westphalia and the Spanish War of Succession resulted in the Austrian Empire obtaining sole control of the House of Habsburg. With the expansion of the Ottoman Empire, nearby Western Europeans saw this as an Islamic state getting in the way of their conquests. One of their European neighbors and also great rivals was the House of Habsburg from Spain. From the 16th through the 18th century, the two sides fought in multiple wars. The most impactful war was the Second Siege of Vienna in 1683, lasting for 2 months. In the early 20th century, during World War I, the Ottomans held an opportunity to take back lost land. In 1914, they came together with the European Central Powers to fight against the Allies, eventually becoming overwhelmed and losing the war. After the Ottoman leader's death, the empire officially fell and the remains of the Ottomans were consolidated and transformed into the modern Republic of Turkey. The Ottoman Empire has greatly impacted the modern world, specifically shown through their successor, the Turkish Republic. To briefly summarize the Great Ottoman legacy, their impact can be divided into 4 large sections. The first was their presence as an Islamic empire, which has largely impacted Muslims today. The second is their cultural tolerance and diversity, setting an example for modern communities. Thirdly, their advancements in art and architecture, specifically with their Islamic religious architecture, has largely influenced the modern world. Finally, the last part of their legacy includes their incredible army and military techniques used to conquer, as they were one of the first empires to use muskets and cannons.